The brain is central to our existence. It generates everything we feel and do. It processes information coming from the outside world, such as the smell of food, and from the inside of the body, such as sensations of hunger. Using all this information, the brain then makes an appropriate response, driving behaviors that help us survive. With long-term alcohol and drug abuse, the brain physically changes. The brain actually shrinks, and its ability to process information is damaged. Deep within the brain, the limbic system lies below the cortex, or outer layer of the brain, which supports a variety of functions, including emotions, behavior, motivation, long-term memory, and olfaction, all affected by heavy alcohol or drug abuse. When someone drinks or takes drugs, the limbic system emits dopamine. This powerful molecule is primarily responsible for the feeling of pleasure we experience when we engage in satisfying activities. The brain releases dopamine into the synaptic gap, which triggers adjoining cells to release their own dopamine molecules. Different activities or ingesting different substances will cause the brain to release differing amounts of dopamine. The more dopamine that's released, the better the person feels, and the more likely they are to repeat this action. And drugs stimulate the release of dopamine in greater quantities than ever before experienced. Because this euphoria is unlike anything the user has previously felt, they're driven to repeat the experience over and over again. Once this happens, the user's brain begins to change and addiction starts taking control. Hardcore addicts will eventually stop feeling any pleasure from using, but cannot quit because of the painful and difficult withdrawal symptoms they experience when trying. This can include severe abdominal cramps, shaking, seizures, and pain levels equal to breaking bones or being severely burnt, all accompanied by debilitating depression, profound emotional distress, and extreme flu-like symptoms. Unfortunately, the changes in the brain do not end there. The frontal lobe of the brain also suffers. It shrinks and loses the ability to function properly. This part of the brain regulates decisions, choices, and the ability to know the difference between right and wrong. When the frontal lobe is not working as it should, you can't control the impulse to drink or take drugs. The second key change which occurs in the brain is that repeated behaviors are associated with feelings and thoughts, which cause the brain to create new neural pathways. Neural signals build up as they get used over and over again. The more these pathways get built up, the more the brain tends to use them, as they become the easiest, most efficient paths neurosignals can take. As addiction progresses, the user will form more and more associations with using, which expands and deepens these networks. The bigger these neural pathways become, the harder it is for the user to change their behavior and reactions, because their brain is driving them to behave in a way it's become accustomed to. The amygdala is controlled by the frontal lobe and is the center of the brain. Without proper control from the frontal lobe, the amygdala becomes oversensitive to stress. In this state, someone can have extreme mood swings and become trapped in a state of panic and worry. Because of this, many addicts and alcoholics are constantly fearful and rarely feel safe. The cellular structure of the brain is affected by heavy drinking and drug use, as well as the gray cells that control thinking and feeling, while the white cells provide the connection and communication between the gray cells. They are like a network of cables passing information from one gray cell to another, and persistent drug and alcohol use kills the white cells in the brain. This severs the communication pathways so that information is not passed along properly. The brain can reroute these communication pathways using the remaining white cells, but it requires abstinence and time for it to happen. These negative effects that drugs and alcohol have on the brain are frightening. But the good news? If someone can stop drinking and taking drugs completely, the brain begins to heal. Cognitive function and brain shrinkage can be reversed. New pathways in the brain can be forged, and a person can return to normal brain function. If someone can learn to live without drugs or alcohol, there's hope for full physical recovery. Stay smart, don't start.